So we saw how we can trigger macros by assigning a macro to a shape, form control, or ActiveX control. Well, another way to trigger macros is by using events. And before we dive into different types of events, let me explain what an event is. Events are actions that users can perform inside of Excel that can trigger macros. The first type of event that we will be going over are worksheet events. And worksheet events are actions that users can perform on a specific worksheet. So instead of inserting a code module and creating procedures inside that module, we can access these worksheet events by double-clicking one of these worksheets within the Microsoft Excel objects. So let's say that we want to trigger a macro when a certain event gets taken place on the Loops and Controls worksheet. Well, what we need to do is double-click Loops and Controls, and currently we already have one sub, which is if the user clicks on the Highlight Fs button, it will call the do until loop. Well, if we want to access the worksheet events, we can come up here and click this dropdown and select Worksheet. And automatically, it inserted a new sub called Worksheet underscore selection change. And this right here is an event that can be taken place on the worksheet. So anytime a user selects a different cell, we are changing selections and it will execute any code within this sub. To change the worksheet event that triggers the macro, what we need to do is come up here to the second dropdown, and here we have a list of all the worksheet events. So if the worksheet gets activated, we can trigger a macro, or if a calculation happens, or a table update. So we have a lot of options to trigger a macro. For this example, let's trigger a macro when this sheet gets activated. So we can select Activate, and let's say that we want a message box that says Welcome to this sheet's name. So we can type in the ampersand sign, and to get the sheet name of the active sheet, we can type in active sheet dot name. And that's it. So let's click a different sheet. And once we select the Loops and Controls sheet, we get our message box saying, Welcome to Loops and Controls. So those are worksheet events. And like we just saw, we have many options to trigger a macro when an action gets taken place on this specific worksheet. And each one of these worksheets has their own worksheet events associated to them.